Hello everyone, here and at home. I'm a researcher, as many of you maybe know, so I've been particularly looking forward to this session. And I think I can guarantee that in the next 45 minutes we're going to hear some really, really cool stuff. First of all, we have Lilik here to explore the latest Reuters research. And there's some really good news in there for audio, I think. He will talk about this. And then right after Lilik, we will hear from Sam. I'll introduce you properly in a moment. And he's done some really cool new research, which the methodology I saw a little bit yesterday, the day before yesterday, that was really, really cool. So this is the agenda. We'll take questions in the end. So let me introduce first Lilik Martijanto, and he's a lecturer at the University of Canberra and at the University Multimedia Nusantara in Indonesia. I know I totally misspelled everything, but I'm sorry. Welcome to the stage, Lilik.
You're so tall. Thank you so much. I do have 15 minutes, so I'll make sure that I'll comply with the rules. So I'm setting up the alarms. Okay. Oh, there. Yep. This session is designed to discuss news consumptions, but to me, for us here, in order to comply with this conference's focus, so I'll be limiting the discussions only about radio and news podcast consumptions, specifically in Asia Pacific. I'm so sorry. It's indeed a tough session. We had our lunch, and I'll be giving you lots of figures and numbers. I'm so sorry for that in advance, but I promise you we'll get maybe some insights from this. For the last 3 years, I've been involved in a project called Digital News Report Australia, published by the News and Media Research Centre at the University of Canberra. This is an annual report and study. This is also a part of the Global Digital News Report commissioned by Reuters Institute for the Study of Journalism at the University of Oxford. And as an official partner in Asia Pacific, University of Canberra got full access of the global data gathered from more than 40 countries around the globe, including several countries in Asia Pacific. And the next slide will tell us about the sample size and sample distributions in this region. Next slide, please. No, sorry. Yeah. Okay. As you can see there, so there are several countries located in the region in Asia Pacific. And as we can see there, the numbers over there, or the sample size, gathered from, the numbers of the respondents sampled from these Asia Pacific countries were quite equals. And this approach made it possible, understandable, and statistically acceptable to compare the radio and news podcast consumption, to make comparison about radio and news podcast consumption among the countries in the region. And one of the questions asked in the survey was whether radio is a source of news for the audience or for the respondents around the globe, including countries located in Asia Pacific region. And as we can see there, most of the respondents in the region, 70%, around 70%, disagree that radio is a source of news, or they perceive that radio is no longer a source of news. And as we can see there, some of the countries in the region, in Asia-Pacific region, recorded levels of preference which were lower than the global average, which was 17% in the latest survey. Only 17%. Only 70% of the global respondents perceived that radio is a source of news. And Indonesia, Indonesia ranked the lowest with only less than 10% of the respondents saying that they agree that radio is a source of news. So most of the respondents sampled or surveyed here in Indonesia disagree that radio, disagree when asked that radio is a source of news. Radio is no longer a source of news, according to them. And as we can see there is a declining trend in these matters. I mean, there is a declining appreciation to the radio as a source of news. And South Korea, as we can see there, is an exception. We can see that the level of preference in South Korea consistently increasing. It's consistently increasing for the last 4 years. We also analyze an even more specific questions, asking the respondents whether or not they perceive radio as the main source of news. Not only source of news, but the main source of news. Both are different things. When it comes to main source of news, we can see there that most of the respondents asked these questions disagree that radio is their main source of news. And Malaysia consistently ranked, when I said most of the respondents, it means more than 90% of the respondents. And Malaysia, so there's only more or less in general 10% of the respondents at most saying that radio is their main source of news. As we can see there, Malaysia consistently ranked as the highest among the lowest, with only 8%. With only 8% of the respondents saying that radio is their main source of news. And this chart, these graphs, also confirms that most of the respondents in the region confirmed that there are 3 other platforms that they will prefer as their main source of news, which are televisions, websites, and social media. I think it's in line with the global trend saying that the most preferable platform for news are TV, social media, and online or websites. There will be exceptions, but we'll talk about it later. And we also asked, the survey also did the same approach to podcasts. What I mean podcast here is news podcast. There are lots of genre in podcasts, and I'm here to talk about specifically news podcasts. And when it comes to news podcasts, we also get these figures. We can see that Indonesia is not included in this survey. From 20 from 2021 and 2024. Indonesia is not included in the analysis. And I will explain why and what will and what we did after that. I will explain it later. So there are 25 countries analyzed in this chart and visualized in this chart, and we can see that it is only Poland that experienced decline, quite a slight decline regarding podcasts as a gateway for news, and most of the respondents living in other countries, including those that are the countries that are located in Asia Pacific, Korea, and Australia. They represent the region with the relatively high level of preference for news podcasts. So, and we can say that that there are increasing trend when it comes to news podcasts, or when it comes to podcasts as an alternative format for news. Indonesia was excluded in this chart, in this analysis, but that's why in the latest survey in 2025, the 2025 Digital News Report and analyzed by the News and Media Research Center in Australia, we specifically tried to look at these issues. I mean, they asked specific question about news podcasts, including to all of the respondents, including those living in Indonesia, and we got these figures. The latest survey, the data shows that news podcast is an emerging news format preferred by those living in Indonesia and surveyed by this study. As we can see, yellow dot over there, that's why we do not have records about news podcast survey or research here in Indonesia, and the latest survey provides the data. The yellow dot over there represents the preference of news podcasts said or stated by the respondents, by Indonesian respondents. And the audience believe that in general, despite the declining trends, most of social media here operating here in Indonesia are still considered as a gateway to find news. We can see the emerging formats are podcasts and the dot below AI chatbots. Okay, and we now have the stories. We now have stories. Radio is sinking, and podcast is emerging. That's the stories. And we then we should agree, and I assume that we all agree that podcast is commonly known as audio file made available on the internet. I will emphasize on this phrase, made available on the internet. It means that podcasters do have options either to build their own apps and then post it on the internet to showcase their podcast, or merely embed it or promote it on the existing social media platforms available on the internet. If the podcasters decide to choose the former, I believe they will ask, what social media attract the most audiences, right? And we also confirms that we should analyze the red line over there, what social media that attract the most audiences nowadays. And our analysis shows that, analysis shows that TikTok, sorry, I think I missed one slide. Sorry. Sorry, I skipped one slide. And this slide I talked about earlier shows that TikTok is the only social media platform that is experiencing incredible increase throughout the years in terms of being most preferable social media platform. I should show the earlier slides. It's about this one. So it tells us that podcast is the emerging platforms or news format, and when it comes to social media to showcase your works, your podcast, maybe TikTok is one of the relevant choice to be considered. And when it comes to TikTok, when it comes to news in TikTok, who do the audiences look for? And our analysis shows that, 3 more minutes, Indonesia and some other countries and some other European countries are anomalies. Here we see that Indonesia and other European countries, some European countries, we can see there, audience living in those countries are ignoring journalists and news media outlets and looking for other content creators and persona in TikTok. While people living in some other countries, including countries located in Asia Pacific countries, we can see Philippines, blah, 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 Malaysia, Japan, respondents living in those countries decided to look for journalists and news media outlets rather than other content creators or persona when it comes to news in TikTok. And, okay, here are the reports I am referencing in these presentations, and the QR codes there are made available to make you directly go and grab the reports. I think that's all. 3 minutes. Thank you so much. Thanks.
I have so many questions, but we have to wait. We have to wait. Yes, thank you, Lidek. That was great. I have questions, but we have to wait until after we hear from Sam. Okay, let me introduce you to Sam Schneiber. He's the CEO and founder of MusicDatak. Well, he has had many roles. I've known him in many roles. He's been PD, a strategist. He's been all over Europe, Australia, US, in many, many roles. But now finally he's moving into research. It's a very good decision. And I have to say, I was shown the deck yesterday, I think, or was the day before. And I've been working in research for 25 years. And there's always been looking for the gap between the quantitative call-out surveys and then the qual surveys in the middle. There's always been this little gap in between. And I'm looking very much forward to this presentation by you, Sam, because you might have found the missing link using AI and personas. I'm looking very forward to hearing this presentation. Sam?
Hello, hello. Hello, everyone. It's my first time at Radiodays Asia, so a lot of new faces for me, and some faces that I know from some decades now. Hello, guys. Hello, everyone. So today I'm going to talk to you about a new way to do some research. Let me use this thing. And it's not just about using AI, but it's about using technology and using also expertise. So in the past 3 decades, I've been program director in Australia, Canada, the US, France, and I've been research consultant in Brazil, the US, and many other countries. And I had a dream. I had a dream of having a tool to sample, gather information, analyze the information, and give to my team and myself feedback from the listeners in real time. So, and why? And I'm sure if you, in your position, you had the same dream. Why I had that dream? It's because it happens a lot that when I got the information, it was too late. And sometimes we decided to do something on air, and it took months before knowing if it was the right decision or not. So, and with traditional research, it's slow, it's limited in the nuances we can get, and is restricted, especially now. Restricted because there is a lot of taboos in the question we can ask. There are regulations, a lot of regulations about that in Europe. And we need to be able to learn more about our listeners without those limits. And the time problem. When you launch a survey, it takes a lot of time to get the results, and sometimes it's too late. The quality problems, there is some bias in the groups. Sometimes there is a leader who will make the others change their mind, taboos, and privacy concerns. And the world is changing. The world is changing very fast. News are happening all the time. Things are changing everywhere. Loyalty is weaker because there is a lot of choices, way more than 5 years, 10 years, 15 years ago. And the approach we had when we started this project 3 years ago was the flight simulator, because the flight simulator in the aviation business industry has completely revolutionized the aviation industry by having safe practice, cost efficiency, enhanced safety, and we can do the same by simulating your audience. And it allows you to simulate your audience reaction, get actionable data, test your programming content, your show, the chemistry of your host, new host, predict audience churn. You can also have information about your competitor, how to convert your P2s into P1. You can also test scenarios, you can test audio, brand positioning. You can test a lot of things. There is no limit in how many things you can test with this new way of doing research with technology. So I have a few questions here for you. What if your audience is available for you 24/7 and you can ask to your audience anything you want at any time with no taboo, with no limits? So no taboo, no limits, no regulation. You can ask anything. What if your panel was huge? Because I remember doing focus groups with 24 people. So 2 groups of 12 people. What about if you can have a group of 100, 1,000? What if you could test instantly anything? What if you could do that without personal data? What if without group bias? What if you could generate your strategy in a few seconds? And what if you knew your second choice listener? So you can convert them to become your super fan and super serve them. How you could stop something bad happening on air by being proactive. What if you could test the chemistry of your host on air in real time and find out how to fix it? How you could model loyalty and know when it breaks. So how is this possible? It's possible because we designed something with the expertise of a team made of, first of all, let me show, François Pachet. He was the director of the Innovation Lab at Spotify, and before that he was the director of the Sony Computer Innovation Lab as well. PhD in AI and expert in audience modeling. And we have been working in the past 3 years together. That's me. And also Richard René, that some of you know because he has been working in Australia and Asia for a while, working at Dial Global and O-Stereo. So we have been working around this new system based on a human team, on experts who designed a system to generate research in real time. So we collect data from the web, from the news outlets, from statistics, data sources, from data partners, social media. We enrich that. We built with mapping personal narrative, emotional responses, and we make it evolve with what we see from the listeners, what we hear from our partners, our clients. We make it evolve on a weekly basis. Because every listener has a story. And we created the duplicas. So all the pictures you've seen are pictures of duplicas. It's synthetic people. It's not real people. So we generate panels of synthetic people, and we ask questions to those synthetic people that represent exactly your target audience. So they are realistic, nuanced, human. They can think, react, change their minds, and remember the context and their history. And the question that I can get sometimes is like, what about doing that with ChatGPT? Well, everybody wants to do everything with ChatGPT, but that has some limits. There is a consensus answer on ChatGPT. It's broad, it's generic knowledge, and you get static responses. What we can do with the system we created, it's real-time responses, it's audience cultural specific insights, diverse perspective, dynamic evolving responses. It's made for radio, television, and podcast. It's trained by media people. It evolves with your feedback. It's controlled and managed by a team of media people. There is a dialectal engine that is systematically controlled viewpoints. It targeted data collection, cross-validation, media-specific professional protocols, and it delivers results that are representative, salient, and immediately actionable. So synthetic panels is becoming the way to do research. It's dynamic. It has emotional intelligence, memory and evolution, and true diversity. That's something that we've seen in the US, in Dallas for Kiss FM with iHeartRadio, something we've seen in London with several radio stations, something we've seen with a station that we tested in our system in Malaysia. Sometimes people in radio can have a stereotype of the target audience, but we've noticed that there is a lot of diversity in the audience, much more than expected. So the other question that I can get is how accurate it is. So because it's a tool that people start to use, there was a study with Stanford University and Google DeepMind, and they compare it with a human panel, and the overlap was 85%. We did a study for L'Oréal in Paris, and the overlap between the study they did with human and the study we did with synthetic panel was 95%. So it's a real-world application. We gather information from the real world, we analyze, we structure, we sample all of this, we make it for you actionable, and we get your feedback, we get your questions to make it evolve on a weekly basis. So you turn data into emotion. That was our goal, and it looks like this. That's for a radio station in the UK. So you get the picture of the panel. You get the story, you get every detail, politic point of view, orientation, personal orientation, religion, at what time they wake up, what is their ritual in the morning, with who they live, what they do, what they think of your morning show, what they think of the morning show of the competitor, how you can convert them into become your super fans. You get a lot of detail, and this is groundbreaking. So thank you very much.
Yeah, no, you stay with the books. Yes. You stay here a minute? Okay, great. Finally you finish, so I can ask questions.
Finally.
This was really, really good. Well, you know me, sorry. I have so many questions. It's really cool. I'm going to start with you, Sam. So when I first saw this, I thought this is really cool. Because I remember when doing research and you present something to your client, in my case, my corporation, as I was said, the missing link between the qualitative 24 people and the big quantitative base, you are kind of searching for what does that mean in this situation, this situation. And I think this could actually be. But I looked at your book, and you explained it to me yesterday, but I have to ask, so maybe everybody else may have the same questions. So you are avoiding stereotypes because an audience to your station is diverse. They're very, very different. They may have some similarities, but they're very, very different. And this is a nuanced look at your audience. But how do you boil all those nuances down to something actionable? Because that was my first question.
Well, that was the goal that we had when we started, and we keep having all the time. It's to represent diversity. In the past 3 decades, in radio, we used to have a persona, one person. Yeah. But the world has changed, and that one person doesn't represent anymore the audience. And we have a lot of tools in our system.
You have like 87 in there, or something like that, 50 something.
Yeah, it's 65.
And it's fascinating. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry.
This one is 65.
You're still answering, and I'm sorry. Keep going.
This one is 65, but we can get to hundreds of people. You get the picture, you get the story, and we have a lot of different tools inside our system that are made to analyze the information that we gather, that is vast, very vast, and to make sure that we can have all the nuances and all the diversity necessary. And when you look at this book, you can see the diversity for this radio station in the UK. Indians, black, white, Muslims, all type of orientations, very diverse. And I think for those radio stations, it's going to be a shock to discover that it's not a white male of 50 plus living in London. First of all, it's not just London,
Yep.
or it's not just Paris. It's the entire country, and it's very diverse.
Yeah, it's a radical new way of doing this. So I would say to everyone that is interested in this to go talk to Sam and see the book, because it's in one way a lot of the data. But on the other hand, your team then boils it down to like touch points. You know, what is your actions here? What should you do based on all this material? And then your client would go, okay, I agree with this, I agree with this, I totally do not agree with this, for instance. But then that's the beauty of it. Then you press that button, and then you do a deep dive into why that conclusion came up.
Yes, no limits on what we can ask.
Nope.
So if there is a question into the answer,
Yep.
we can go deeper
Yep.
and deeper and deeper. And what you see here, it's a monthly report.
Yes.
So you can change the question, you can design a new questionnaire, you can make the station involved on a monthly basis. It's very powerful in that ways. The feedback of the team is what makes it very powerful. It's how we are customizing the tool and the questionnaire based on the client's team wants and the feedback they're giving us.
Yeah, and it's not, as I understand it, I'll get back to you just a minute. And as I understand it, because that's really interesting as well, because some still have like shock jock stations and stuff. So something comes from the PD or the organization themselves. This is raises questions. How will we do that? And you put that into the next round, so you get answers in the next round. So that's the internal thing, that the feedback you get every month is continuously growing and learning. But on the other hand, I mean, some of us still have shock jocks online, you know, doing their thing. And this also, because the reality change. So you did this January, and then by next month, things can have happened that influences. If you are, you know, really pushing the boundaries in your show, that will also implement the feedback you then get for the next month.
Yeah, it's real time. We're building another tool that will arrive in October, where you will be able to ask questions about what happened this morning or what is happening right now on air. If your news team or your morning show team is talking about a specific subject, or right now you can ask questions about it in real time, and you can inform your team of the different perspective of your audience, and so you avoid risks, and you know exactly where you're going, because you know exactly what are the different point of view of your target in real time.
Amazing stuff. I'll get back to you. Lilek.
Now my turn.
I just have a few more questions that because if I start asking you, I'll never get the microphone back, so you have to forgive me. I have a few questions. So, news consumption. News podcasts rise. That's good news?
Yes, that's good news.
That's good news?
The bad news is?
The bad news is radio?
You're thinking.
I grew up with radio, but on the other hand, I kind of understand it. But can you gauge the rise of news podcasts? Because we've seen a rise, but this year was particularly a good year for podcasts. I know you're a researcher, you're actually a scientist, so you don't want to speculate, but can I ask you to do it anyway? Do you think this trend will continue with the same speed?
I think so. Yes. I have a strong feeling that podcast is emerging now and following years. I mean, yes, the trend of the data shows that despite of the great, we know that podcast is rising, podcast is emerging. There is increasing listeners of podcasts. And we should objectively say that podcast is not yet an equal rival for TV and websites.
When is it?
It will be. Yes, but that's why. But yes, it's not an equal rival, but it is fluid and it is it can adapt in any kind of news platforms. Podcast can be inserted, can be promoted, can be packed in a specific apps and embedded in any kinds of platforms available on the internet. That's why this, I'm not talking about the data, but I'm talking about what I believe in. I believe that journalism. I'm talking about news podcasts, and I'm talking about journalism. Therefore, and I believe that journalism is just like energy. It can be. Sorry, we cannot get rid of journalism, but we can transform it into another formats. I mean, podcasts. When it comes to news in podcasts, when it comes to podcast news, I think it's just like an energy. We can get rid of the news podcast, but we can transform it into another forms, and we can embed it into another platforms. That's why I can say that podcast is it's promising. I mean, when you ask me when will podcast be the equal rival of TV, social media, and websites, I don't have specific and a firm answer, but I believe that based on the characteristic of the podcast, I do believe that podcast will be. The following years will be the amazing years for podcasts.
It kind of reaches. I've read the report. It kind of reaches the the user need, and also that you're discovering new interesting ways to do journalism in this new format. So just one more question on another topic, which is the TikTok. I come from Europe. And I know in Australia also, TikTok is actually being banned some places because of the influence. How worried should we? Are you worried about the huge?
Yes, I do. There are actually two slides that I did not present here. One of which shows us about the potential. TikTok as a potential source of misinformation. We do believe that, talking specifically about Indonesia, I showed earlier that most of audiences in Indonesia decided to look for general content creators and persona instead of looking for journalists and media outlets talking about news in podcasts. And for me, it relates. It closely connected to the potential misinformations widespread on the podcast. So the slide that I did not show here shows us that it's interesting. Indonesian audience decided to use podcast for news, and they agree that they decided to use TikTok for news, including podcasts, but they also believe that TikTok is the main source of misinformation in Indonesia. That's quite interesting. And one more thing before you close the session. We talked about the promising years for podcasts. Following years are the promising years for podcasts. Just if for podcasts, podcasters put attention on this issue. Our analysis of the Reuters data shows that podcast is interesting, quote unquote, only for those who are educated and male. I don't know. I don't know why. But data shows that podcasts are interested mostly for those who are educated, highly educated, and male.
Yeah, well, we've seen data before that news is a male sport. If you, but interesting, very interesting. We still. Oh, you're going to say something, Sam?
No.
Oh.
I'm waiting for your questions.
Okay, well, I got more. But if someone has an arm, I'll give you 2 seconds to raise that arm for a question. Otherwise, I have more questions. Sold. You're dealing in stories.
Yes.
And not data.
Exactly. It's information and then stories. So what's the story of our listener?
Don't look at the moderator. Just look at me and keep answering. We have plenty of time.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's the story of our listeners.
Yes.
And the story of their life. We can see in that book that some listeners had trauma in their childhood, in their teenage age. We can have the story of their daily routines, the story of their day, story of their life.
Yeah.
And that is very useful information for the team at the radio station, the on-air team, morning show team,
Yes.
marketing team.
Yes. They would love it.
Sales as well.
Yes, but the PDs are used to numbers and graphs and figures, but they are also taking to this because that's a radical new way of presenting, insights.
Yeah, that's a book that you read. You can get the analysis with the summaries, the key insight, the recommendation, but that's a book that you read.
Yes.
And after reading that book, you know exactly what your audience think and what are the nuances, what are the differences, what are the point of view, what their life is made of. What are their orientations? It's very deep, very nuanced, very detailed.
Okay, this has been great. I would really recommend, because he's not going to give it to you, but he will hold it in his hand, and you can have a look at it and ask questions, because that really is quite a good way to understand it. I also encourage you to go read in depth. It's online. The news report from Reuters is recommended reading is really good. Thank you very much for a great session, guys. Thank you very much
Peter.
for coming. Thank you.
Thank you.